welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So that's the École Militaire chantage gambit by Mrs. Clinton to China. You vote for these crippling sanctions against Iran and hurt yourself that way, cut your throat that way, or a war in the Gulf may result, which will hurt you even more. And the Chinese, the idea is it's a Hong Kong monkey trap, right, that the Chinese can't let go because they need this oil. So the U.S. thinks they have China backed into a corner on this issue, but, of course, reality always richer than the Anglo-American plan somehow, right? Ask Sir Neville Chamberlain and how surprised he was when things began to go wrong for him in 1940. So, Washington Post of this morning, China throws kink into U.S.-led push for sanctions on Iran. China has thrown a roadblock into the push for sanctions, saying it is important to continue negotiations as long as Iran appears willing to consider a deal and give up some of this enriched uranium. Quote, to talk about sanctions at the moment, right now, will complicate the situation and might stand in the way of finding a diplomatic solution, says Chinese Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi in Paris. Now, the Sarkozy regime of France is the point for this stuff. Obama is supposed to be a soft cop. Sarkozy and Fillon, his prime minister, and this Kouchner, this trahison sans frontières, right, betrayal without borders, this character with his notions of humanitarian intervention, this is a supranational, one-world imperialist meddler. In other words, it's imperialism, but dressed up in the language of human rights and humanitarianism. The French regime is pushing this stuff hard. Fillon says he will ask the United Nations to adopt a resolution proposing strong sanctions against Iran because of its nuclear program. But now, according to the Washington Post, it's going to take months of haggling to get the sanctions, the crippling sanctions that Obama wants, and they'll never be crippling because the Chinese maybe vote for symbolic sanctions, but maybe they won't. So you've also got this going on. So the immediate result of Mrs. Clinton's threats, the chantage speech at the École Militaire, is a failure. But now let's look at the at the background. I think we can identify about 10 areas of direct, severe bilateral conflict between these two countries, plus feed in about two or three multilateral areas. First of all, the U.S. is systematically antagonizing China by meddling in Chinese internal affairs. It's a very sensitive topic because it would be for you, too, if you had gone through the celestial kingdom of the Taiping, if you had gone through unequal treaties, treaty ports, extraterritoriality, foreigners taking the customs receipts, and all the rest of this. If your country had been a kind of playground or area for foreigners to run wild for the best part of a century and a half, you'd understand this. And above all, the three opium wars waged by the British in the 19th century to secure the import of opium from the British East India Company into China, all of this rankled. This has left a long tradition of bitterness. So the U.S. is antagonizing China. How? Taiwan, $6.5 billion worth of arms, including some pretty hefty stuff. It's expected here that the Chinese are going to sanction a series of aerospace companies who are selling to Taiwan. And the message is, you want to sell to Taiwan? Great. You're not selling to us. You choose between mainland and Taiwan, and you choose. Go ahead and choose, because you're not getting both. This would be Boeing, McDonnell Douglas. They make the Harpoon missile. United Technologies, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and so on down the list. So that is going to then translate, if it's basically Boeing, you're going to find the representatives and congresspersons from the state of Washington and a few other places are going to suddenly discover how foolish it is to antagonize China. So Taiwan, Tibet. Now this, we also have now the feudal monster, the Dalai Lama, whose regime was basically majority of serfs, minority of slaves, minority of parasitical Buddhist monks who lived off everybody else in every way, hereditary debt, punishment quite commonly lopping off your arm if you did something this regime didn't like. This is this guy. So he's very spiritual, but he represents one of the most reactionary, backward, feudal landowning classes in the world. And he's now expected at the White House in mid-February. And, of course, Barbara Streisand and Richard Gere will be there swooning for this reactionary, feudal monster, the Dalai Lama. We'll do a number on the Dalai Lama probably next week, a detailed biography. He's been on the CIA payroll since about 1959-60, minimum. There was a big bloody rebellion in Tibet fomented by the CIA. You got a book, The CIA's Secret War in Tibet. During the 1960s, he admitted he was getting more than $1 million a year from the CIA, and that has never ended. So he's got this operation set up in the north of India. MI6 loves him. CIA loves him. He's very spiritual, so the Hollywood degenerate elite goes for him. Anyway, this is now the U.S. meddling in Taiwan and Tibet. Let's not forget the Uyghurs of Xinjiang province, the northwest, Chinese Turkestan. Here we have Rabia Kadir and her group, the World Uyghur Conference, regularly attacked in the Chinese media as terrorists, and they have a case. Even dark rumors about how these people make money. We'll have some more about that. They supplement their money they get from the U.S. government with various kinds of nefarious activities. There's also the question of the South China Sea. Here we are in the area of some islands which have got some oil and be claimed by different countries. Vietnam claims it. I think Taiwan claims it. Beijing claims it. The U.S. is in there massively. This is like, from their point of view, it's like going into Lake Superior and mucking around there. Or better yet, Lake Michigan, something that's pretty much all in your own territory. So that's considered meddling. Cyberspace. We need to do a special thing on this. Google. According now to the Washington Post of yesterday, Thursday, February 4th, Google to enlist NSA to ward off attacks. So now we have an open public alliance between Google and the National Security Agency to fight the Beijing government. In other words, to try to force the opening of this cyberspace. The Chinese regard cyberspace as a part of sovereign territory, like airspace, land, ocean areas, territorial waters, cyberspace. For them, it's all in the same area. And, of course, people are wondering if Google is openly in a cartel with the NSA, does that mean if you're on Google that the NSA will be reading your emails if they aren't already? Well, probably. So I don't know. Maybe switch to Yahoo and see if that does any good. We're also told here in this interesting Washington Post coverage on the topic that this is nothing new, that it's been going on for a long, long time, that we're told that the U.S. Intelligence community works closely with firms like Google, and that it's traditional that this has been going on. Over the past decade, other Silicon Valley companies have quietly turned to the NSA for guidance in protecting their networks. The NSA is reaching out to other government agencies that play key roles in the U.S. effort to defend cyberspace and might be able to help in the Google investigation. Yeah, investigation that starts with Google alleging that things were done to them by the Chinese government. Let's also never forget, on the morning of January 4th, the Chinese Great Cyber Wall came down through an attack apparently facilitated by Falun Gong and the NSA as a means of essentially destroying these cyber defenses against the flow of propaganda to this population of several million young dupes that might hang on to every word coming from Langley. So we'll be back in a minute.